can you tell us, please tell me like what you go by or?
I go by Kimberly.
Mhm.
I am, well, I was going to start to just talk about myself,
Sure,
but
go
I
for
don't
it.
want,
Thank
okay.
you. So first of all, thank you so much for coming on today, Kimberly. I understand, and you have a Instagram presence, is that right?
I've just gotten started on Twitch.
Oh, on Twitch.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but just barely. I'm just getting my feet wet and getting out there. I've been wanting to for a long time, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
That's awesome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do on Twitch and where people can find you?
No.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Thank you, though. I appreciate that, but not yet.
Okay,
I mean,
that's
not. We'll see.
totally
Honestly,
fine.
Dr. K, I'm so nervous right now. I don't even remember my Twitch name.
Okay,
And that's going to
my
be
bad.
okay. No.
Sometimes when people come on, we try to direct traffic to
I
their,
know,
you
and
know,
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
but totally fine. So yeah, tell me what do you want to talk about today, Kimberly, or tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a single mom. I
Okay.
have two young boys. They are 8 and almost 10. Um, uh, I'm a single mom. However, I do have extra help right now. Their dad has actually been living in the home, separate areas. We're not together, for the past year, which has been tremendously helpful. He was out of state before. My boys are they're Brian and Ellis. My oldest is Brian. He is very smart. He's in the gifted. He's a gifted kid. He's very proud of that.
And that's Brian.
That's Brian.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's tall and redheaded and comes by that temper very naturally from that red hair.
Okay.
Ellis is my youngest, and they actually have two different dads. So
Okay.
Brian's dad is the one who's in the home.
Okay.
Ellis's dad is not involved. He's
Okay.
refused to ever meet him.
Okay.
I make awesome life choices is the moral of that story.
Parenting in the digital age is becoming increasingly complicated, and we've helped tons of parents and even more of their kids develop healthy relationships with technology. At Healthy Gamer, we believe that there are 3 steps that will help solve this problem. The first is you as a parent need to understand how technology is affecting your child's brain and psychology, because it's really clear that it's doing something, but we're not really taught what it's doing to our kids. The second is learning how to communicate with your children, because even though you're saying all the right stuff, it's not really sinking in. And the third is how to actually successfully set limits and set healthy boundaries, because our experience is that a lot of parents are trying really hard, but things are moving in the wrong direction. So if y'all are interested, please check out the link in the description below.
My youngest, he is blonde-headed and blue-eyed and has dimples, and he is more and more like me as the years progress. I used to joke that my kids didn't look like anything like me, and I should just hire myself out to whoever wants a replica of themselves. My DNA doesn't even get involved, so I'm the woman for the job. But anyway, he also has my ADHD tendencies. I'm probably undiagnosed dyslexic, and I'm working on him getting that official diagnosis. He struggles. He's been tested and technically should be getting help from the school, but that's another story.
Tested
Anyway.
for dyslexia?
Yes.
Okay.
So he's seen a speech therapist and qualifies for, he speaks well, but he's classic dyslexia, but the school is giving me pushback. So anyway.
Wow, that sounds tough.
Yeah, it is. I have a trauma background. I was homeschooled And eventually my parents kind of officially joined what's now considered a cult, which I believe it to be a cult. At 17 years old, I went and started working up at the cult headquarters under the leader of the organization. Um, uh, Amazon Prime recently did a docuseries on it. It's Shiny Happy People, so it's the same organization the Duggars were involved in. And actually, that came out earlier this summer, and it's kind of like a PG-13 of closer to a rated R real life. It could have been a lot worse. It was kind of interesting when the docuseries came out. I was super excited about it. I thought I wouldn't have kind of so many PTSD symptoms that I did when it came out. I was concerned that it would trigger me by sharing too much, and instead I just feel like, oh my gosh, this is just like the base level stuff. This is just kind of sets the stage for so many other stories.
Okay.
And so I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No. I was just like, okay. I'm just absorbing.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to keep myself from kind of, I don't mind sharing at all, but I also want to be conscientious about not taking over the conversation or anything like that. And I kind of had a good childhood mostly up until going to the cult headquarters. And I wasn't sexually abused up there or anything. The leader of the organization has since been removed after 60 plus girls came against him with sexual harassment allegations, which is totally believable. The leader of the organization, my room was across from his office building, like where he worked. And it was well known that you had to be pretty to work there. It was mostly women, at least during the years I was up there. I was up there off and on over the course of 2 or 3 years, starting at 17. It was well known that only the prettiest of those who were there worked in the same office building as Mr. Gothard is his name, and only the prettiest and most talented of those worked late at night with him.
Wow.
He so and it was, I didn't even know what a cult was. Sure. It was very, very sheltered. I didn't know Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan were like two different people until like my late teens, early 20s. And like didn't know who Prince was until he died. And my oldest son's dad, his name is John Lennon, and I couldn't figure out, like, why are people so enamored with your name when I was 21 and met him. So yeah, so I'm still, I mean, I'm in my 30s now, but I'm still pretty oblivious, or I don't know, like the names of social celebrities and such just really don't stick.
Me either.
I appreciate not being alone. It kind of definitely makes me an oddball. At this point, I'm like, yeah, so I don't know anybody, but at this point, is it really, because how much of it is my upbringing and how much of it is like my poor memory? Because sometimes it's just like throwing dry pasta against my brain, like trying to remember information. It's just like, it's just not going to stick.
Okay.
So there's that. My family really, so I'm the oldest of 8. I helped raise my younger siblings. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a chemical engineer. And like I said, we were sheltered, but I was pretty happy growing up. Very, very religious. I was determined I was going to die a martyr. That was like one of
Mm.
my life goals, was I was going to die a martyr.
Can you help me
I was going,
understand that? What would be the goal of that?
um, I was in love with Jesus. I'm no longer religious. I was in love with Jesus. I grew up reading a lot of not classical literature, but uh, um, just storybooks, historical fiction that basically really the heroes were people who were dying
Okay.
for
A good cause.
Christianity
Oh, Christianity.
mostly.
Okay.
um, uh, I don't know if you're familiar with like Fox's Book of Martyrs. Looking back, I think it's so weird. It was a well-known book back in my small community, but it basically goes through and highlights just horrendous deaths of individuals who were martyred, starting from the times of Jesus. And
Wow.
I don't know how further on it goes. I mean, it talks about like people's bellies being slit open and food
My
poured
God.
in them and while they're alive, and pigs being sent to like um
My God.
kill these people. I hope that's not too harsh for me to say, but I was like 10, 9 and 10 reading
Wow.
this material, and these were my heroes. So um
That's
and
wild.
yeah. um I um I used to, I mean, growing up, I didn't really have friends. I think at two different times I had uh, a friend. And one of those people was really kind of a horrible person who was constantly like just pathologically lying and manipulating my sister and I to try to like hurt ourselves for her entertainment. And that was my only friend for years and years. And then around the age of 10, I guess, I had another friend that she lived like 30, 45 minutes away, and she didn't have any younger siblings. So when we had homeschool events, if she wasn't invited sometimes.
Hmm.
They would sometimes invite her for me, which was very, very nice of the families. But her family was also very judgmental and such, so it kind of made it harder.
So, Kimberly, is there something in particular that you wanted to focus on today? I actually really
Thank you.
appreciate
Yeah.
the background. It's actually really helps me to understand a little bit about your experience,
Yeah.
which
Um,
sounds difficult, for
it
lack
was
of a better
difficult.
term.
Yeah. Um, I feel like if I could fix myself, I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but if I could fix myself, um, I could be a better mom. And my boys struggle, I struggle. Um, I'm doing so much better in life. Just, I kind of started to give you snippets, but like it keeps going. I eventually was raped and so on and so forth. And it just keeps going. My family really abandoned me. And I am, I've worked really hard. I'm actually a nurse. I work in the hospital. Very, very proud of myself. I struggle a lot. My memory, like I said, sucks. Um, and I don't know what I'm doing socially um, all the time.
Okay.
So that is stressful. And don't have friends, et cetera, et cetera. My support system is limited. My son's dad is kind of my only friend right now. but he was previously removed from my home years back, and I have cameras in my house just to make sure everything stays kosher, and we're safe. That was a statement. But life is hard, and it's so much better than it used to be.
But
So
it ain't.
much better, but
But
it's
it ain't.
still
It's
hard.
far from easy.
Yeah. I'm tired. Not just like physically tired, although I am that too often, but I am I'm tired of being here. And that's not something I focus on a lot. But it's a feeling that's very, very present when things get harder, or when my oldest is yelling at me, and when I'm trying to enforce boundaries. And I've had a lot of therapy over the years.
Good for you.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely wouldn't, gosh, I wouldn't be a nurse, and I would not be alive, for sure, if it weren't for all the therapy. And the most life-changing of the therapy that I've gotten was actually group therapy. So I really believe in everything you're doing, and promoting group therapy and such. And I so wish group therapy was something that was just something you did while in your childhood years, so either middle school or high school or both. I believe I don't I think there needs to be more of that, and I'll stop myself from going on a bigger tangent. But
I'll visit that tangent later if that's okay.
absolutely. Sorry if I just
No, it's
found in your ear.
sometimes you need oxygen.
And so my I feel like if I were fixed, maybe I guess I started on that whole therapy tangent because I was just going to mention, like, I feel my inner child just shrinking whenever my oldest in particular is yelling at me.
I see. Okay.
And I'm trying to like enforce boundaries, and I'm trying to kind of reel my own emotions in, and kind of keep my parent self, like not just my parent self to my kid, but my parent self to my inner child, kind of online, and enforce boundaries. It's really hard for me to sometimes even know what boundaries to enforce, because I hear him yelling, and he's had struggles. He's actually been sorry, at 8, he begged me to go to the hospital because he wanted to hurt himself. And so the boundaries I'm trying to enforce are usually involving games. They're usually revolving around video games. And I enjoy playing games. So I'm not like some parent that just like, I hate video games and I don't want you to have anything to do with them. But I'm trying to be a good parent and limit his screen time and so on and so forth. So anyway, and getting him to do anything else is anything else is just a challenge. So he begged me to take him to the hospital, that he needed help. And I was, okay, we're going to the hospital then. And I really wish, I'm really glad that I knew to take him. And he's smart. He's so smart. And he's very emotional. So like 8 is so young, but I do believe like he he could have been one of those 8-year-olds. Um, it's also like the only reason I'm really alive is because of my kids. And there were years when I was hanging on to life. Anytime I wasn't keeping myself kind of too busy to think, I wanted to end things so much. And so there were years when it was just, even if I can't do anything else right now, I am staying alive for my kids, because the statistics of course, killing yourself as a parent for what your kids then experience is daunting, to say the least. And so, and here, so goal number one, I want my kids to be okay. And he definitely wasn't okay. And I feel like a fuck up. That's kind of, and he's doing better. He is doing better. But there's still lots and lots of challenges. So, what do I want to talk about? If you could fix me, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure.
So that so my kids can be okay, and maybe I can be okay. And I know I've focused a lot on my oldest, and my youngest has definitely struggles too. But he kind of takes a back seat. He not in my mind, I'm not looking to put him there, but when his brother is acting out, I see him making himself small and quiet, or especially sweet, and so on and so forth. He's trying to, and I know enough to know he's trying to meet my own needs, and so I am trying to meet my own needs so he does not feel like he needs to meet my needs. I'm trying and we've grown a lot, but like I said, life is still hard. So any thoughts?
Yeah, so many. If I were to notice good things about you, how do you think you would react?
I've worked on that a lot. I fangirl, and not over natural like social media influences, but like Kristen Neff, who wrote the book Self-Compassion. That was tremendously helpful for me. So I've worked a lot on it, and I guess I would appreciate it. And at the same time, I know and I appreciate it, but it doesn't fix me. And it helps me get through the day to day without, because I most of the time, like, I feel like even at work, I'm kind of walking around and trying not to expose the bright blinking L for loser sign on my forehead.
Yeah.
At the same time, I feel like I know that I've been through a lot, which was progress in the first place. But I also but I'm still messed up.
Yeah.
And it
Can I share some thoughts? Just talking to you, Kimberly, makes me feel like you're kind of keeping the wolves at bay, but just barely. Like, there are so many successes, but I get the sense that this is like a house of cards that you've painstakingly like put together. And boy, is it tall, and it's big, and you have so many like feathers in your cap, right? Like, such progress from the way that you grew up to where you are now. You're a nurse. Like, I can't imagine how hard it was to get to that point. So many, speaking of Amazon Prime documentaries, I'm sure they could make one about you, and it would be a story of triumph against overwhelming odds. But I also get the sense that that's like kind of fake.
Yeah.
Right? That like everyone else sees this sort of like resilient, the opposite of a martyr, someone who pulled everything together, but you're like, oh shit, this is like everything's about to fall apart in any minute. And I'm also getting a lot of kind of hopelessness that everything that you've put in is not going to be enough, right? Because you're a mom who's made so much progress, but your kid is like maybe suicidal at the age of 8. And like, frankly, how fucked up is that?
Yeah.
Right? And can you fix that? And that's kind of what I'm getting. I think there's a lot of legitimate, I'm not saying you're fucked up. I'm not saying that things aren't hopeless, but let's call it what it is, which is that you've climbed 1,000 feet and you're still well below the surface.
Yeah.
Right. And so then the question becomes like, what do you do? Like, how much further can you climb? Because it's like, it's hard to climb, right? Like you're digging yourself out of a pit and now you've got 2 little ones that you're also trying to like lift up. And then if you don't climb hard enough and you're running out of energy, right? It's like tiring every single day. Like, what happens? Like if you're still a couple thousand feet below the surface and you can't climb them anymore. And so, I'm getting, I'm getting like this cloud of hopelessness that's being kept at bay by a matchstick, which is starting to burn down.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting a lot of kind of inevitability from you. So how does that sit with you?
Everything sits except, I guess, I'm the inevitability. Guess maybe I feel like the inevitability is there, but I'm also don't want to face that as an option, won't face that, but I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm constantly just like running up this mountain of jelly beans. It just doesn't even matter. It's almost a hilarious endeavor.
Yeah. Wow. What beautiful imagery.
But at the same time, I have worked so hard and I have overcome so much, and I have to hang on to that. I can't let the inevitable be the inevitable, because then what do I have left? Because then we're really screwed. Then, then we're really screwed.
So, Kimberly, I wish I could say you're going to be fine and your kids are going to be fine. I really wish I could. I'm optimistic. I'm not. I get where you're coming from, and I think that I've seen dire situations like that, and things do end up good. I'm hopeful for that. I think you've got. See, this is the tricky thing. If I say you've got everything it takes to make it okay, this is the start of the problem. Yeah. So if I say like, oh my God, Kimberly, like you're so resilient and brilliant, and like, oh my God, like we should make a Lifetime movie out of you because you're such an amazing mother.
God.
Like, oh my God, right? But then like if things don't end up okay, who's at fault? Oh. If we say that you have the potential to like have the life of your dreams and it doesn't end up like that, who's to blame? Me. Right. So I think this is where we have to start very carefully, because I know it sounds kind of weird. I know you've moved away from religion, so I'm going to lean a little bit. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know why I jumped on that so much. Yeah, I'm not open to Christianity. I shouldn't say I'm not. I definitely wouldn't want to have a conversation where you're trying to convert me. Not that I think you're going to, but there is a part of me that wants something more, that wants something to exist. And anyway, but I interrupted you. You were saying?
I think so. If we look at the science of trauma survivors, what we know is that, like, right now I get the sense that you're slipping, right? Climbing a mountain of jelly beans is beautiful. So if we sort of think about, like, what is the rope that you can grab onto that can kind of like help you climb? So what we know from science of surviving trauma is that constructing some sort of narrative or compass is very important at like helping you make progress. So it's not about doing more. It's not about being better. It's not even about things going well with your kids, because I'm sure there are bright points and there are low points. I'd say the most important thing that I'm kind of getting from you, and when I've worked with people like you and kids like your kids, is we have to get a sense of like what the fuck is going on here, right? Like, what are we doing? What's reasonable to expect of ourselves? And this can be harsh because I don't know. And I think there's a lot of progress to be made. So I'm not like pessimistic by any means, but I think that this is like, you've been dealt a crappy hand of cards. You've played it beautifully to this point, but you still have a crappy hand of cards in a lot of ways. I think you've got a lot of good cards. So I'm not trying to be like pessimistic, but let's call it what it is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate if you were to say everything's going to be fine, I'd be like,
No, I mean, I think I think paradoxically, the most important thing for you to do is to recognize that if everything is not okay, it's not your fault. What do you think about that?
I am aware that a feeling of control can be a common motivator, and can provide a sense of stability, and it feels a little bit like you're taking some of not you, but that idea is taking some of my control, which is weird because I also don't want to be responsible for all of it. Like, I can't do it. I getting through nursing school while working, and like a super limited support system. I had a babysitter. Her and her husband thankfully allowed me to pay them, but I could never pay them enough for what they did for me to help watch the kids more so I could go to school. And all of that, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I don't even remember. Yeah. No. You're saying.
Yeah. So I think that you're like, you don't, and when I say like, if things don't go well, that may not necessarily be on you. What do you think about that?
I guess it's true. And there's the feeling in me is I'm kind of reminded of a rug getting taken out from under my feet and brought back, and I'm trying not to. So that's the feeling of, which I think is related to the loss of control and stuff. What I think about it is, it's true. It's also kind of devastating.
Yes. Right. So I mean, like, I think if this ever sees the light of day and gets uploaded somewhere, I think everyone is going to be able to tell that, like, you're saying no to me. Right? Like, you're too polite, but you're like, no, I don't want to do that.
Well,
I'm not.
I think I can accept it cognitively.
Right. Sure. So like that, but like, if we're talking about what's gonna fix this, I mean, we can't fix it. I certainly can't fix it. But I think a big part of this, and I'll explain myself. But I just wanted to, like, instead of bullshitting and pretending to do otherwise, I'm gonna tell you where I'm going, and then I'm gonna try to drag you there.
Thank you. Please do. It'd be kind of nice to be the one drug along as opposed to the one.
Yeah. So I just want you to hold the rope, and I'm gonna do some pulling. Okay.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So the first thing is like, what influence, I know it sounds kind of weird, but like what control do you have over your child's life?
So, that I don't have nearly as much control as I would like to have. And at the same time, I don't want it, but I want, I'm going to try to not let myself splinter off too much, but I want him to, don't want him to grow up being molded like I was molded growing up. I was born, my purpose was to spread a specific ideology. And then after I left the cult organization, I didn't know what was up or down anymore. At a certain point, I consciously was like, and my family had abandoned me, and it was awful. And I consciously had to be like, I don't know anything anymore. I don't know what is common sense. I don't know what isn't common sense. The cult, I was supposed to be able to hear God's voice all the time, and thankfully I'm not schizophrenic or the like, so I wasn't actually hearing voices, but I became ultra aware of thoughts and feelings and sensations. And because I was supposed to be totally aware of God's voice down to like every decision, like which hallway to take to get to the same destination. And I am not the only one from this organization that I've had conversations with who are like, yes, absolutely. So there were different ways to obtain God's grace, which were redefined. And I've totally deviated from your initial question. I apologize.
No, that's fine. So Kimberly, you don't have to restrain yourself. I'll rein you in. Okay. So like kind of coming back to it. So let's understand this, right? So I'm telling you, you got to surrender some control. And this actually, let me ask the question again. How much control do you have over your child's life?
I can heavily influence my child and his decisions, but I cannot control.
Okay, great. So, what determines the degree of influence that you can exert?
He does.
To a certain degree, yes. What else?
My actions, behaviors.
How much do you control your actions and your behaviors?
Heavily, but not as much as
like
very.
100% meaning complete control, 0%. Where would you stick your 0% meaning you're like the weather? Okay, you're like,
that was great.
So like where do you think you live?
So I don't think I have 100%, because if I did, my brain would work far more effectively. 80%?
Yeah, I'd give you 50%.
Okay.
Like, I think most human beings are like 50%. And that's what's really confusing, right? But if we sort of like stop and think about it, you can wake up one day and you can be like, I want to eat something healthy today. And then your brain and your body are like, nah, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, I need to go to bed on time because I need to wake up early. And our brain and our body are like, we're not going to do that. I'd say 50% is lucky. Okay? So I think that there's a couple things to kind of point out. So like, first is that you grew up in an environment where like everything around you was controlled. And I know it's kind of weird, but like, so that's how you learned how to parent, is like, what does a parent do? A parent makes sure, accepts complete responsibility, and removes any degree of independence or responsibility on the part of a child. And you use the word mold. I would even go as far as to say craft or build. Absolutely. I mean, you weren't molding. This isn't like bonsai where we're cultivating a natural growth in a particular direction. This is like, we're going to break apart the pieces of a human being and a human mind, and we're going to reassemble them in the way that we want to. And by the way, if you don't hear the voice of God, there's something wrong with you.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, and fast more. So then I starved myself into anorexia
Right.
and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway.
Yeah. So like, I think you were dealt a really shitty hand in life, and you've come a long way. And I think that, like, I know this is kind of weird, but like, I don't know if what you want is something that you can create for your life. That's
Okay.
true of all humans.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, I think it's especially true for you because, like, I mean, you're telling me, I mean, I think all the stuff you told me at the beginning about not knowing the difference between like Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan, like when we sort of think about what makes a good parent, we're assuming that everyone is like starting from the starting line. And that, like, if you think about what, like, how we learn how to parent, like, we learn how to parent from our parents. And I think the really crippling thing, the most devastating thing about your situation is that how much you want for your children does not change, right? You want the things for your kids that every other mom wants for their boys. They're boys who are brilliant and troubled. They're boys who are taking responsibility for taking care of mom's feelings and who are such sweet boys and struggling with dyslexia. And they're so awesome and they struggle so much. And you just want them to be healthy and happy, just like every other mom. The tragedy is that you are not like just every other mom. And, you know, like, I'm with you that you want to be fixed. Because if you think like, okay, if I fix myself, then my kids will be happy and normal and healthy. Now, that's really dangerous thinking because if they're not happy and healthy and normal, who's to blame?
Me.
Right? And that's the really tricky thing. I mean, I say this as a psychiatrist sometimes, like, can I tell you a story?
Absolutely.
So, you know, sometimes like when we're working in inpatient units, we'll see kids and the kid will just be completely dysregulated. And we're like, man, like, what is wrong with this kid? And then we'll meet the parents. And one of two things, this is kind of judgmental, but one of two things happen. One thing is we meet the parents, we're like, oh, that's why the kid screwed up. Now it makes perfect sense. But I'd say at least half of the time, we meet the parents and the parents are like, there's nothing wrong with the parents. The parents aren't screwed up. And I think one of the hardest things to recognize as a parent, and you learn this lesson as a doctor, is like some people are just different. Some people struggle in ways that other people don't. We're a population and some of us are blessed with high internal ability to emotionally regulate and some of us aren't. You know, your kid, you kind of mentioned that he's got a temper, and there's a lot of, what I get the sense about Brian is that there's a lot of energy there. The problem is that, like, it can be a tsunami or it can be like irrigation.
Yeah.
You know? And like it's a challenge because he's dealing with a lot of feelings. This is where we also sort of know that people who suffer from a lot of trauma have difficulty with emotional regulation. And what that means is that to a certain degree, I'm not trying to blame you here, so you got to be careful here.
Okay.
So like, you know, you weren't taught how to regulate your emotions. And so it's hard for, yeah. And
anger is wrong.
Right.
You can't be angry.
Yeah. Right. And there's all kinds of trauma responses because, like, you know, it sounds like when your 10-year-old gets angry, like your inner child takes over. So you become 5, you become 6, you become 7. And just because it happens, I know it's hard to say, like, I really don't blame you for that. You may blame you, which is okay. Like that, you know, because that also is something that you learn how to do. So one thing that I've learned a lot about trauma survivors is they seem to think that, you know, the most common question is like, what's wrong with me? Whereas what you really need to ask yourself is what happened to you, because what's wrong with you is nothing's wrong with you, because everything that's quote unquote wrong with you is a consequence of what happened to you. I know it sounds kind of weird, but those two questions are one and the same. And there is all this weird crap about like control and not wanting to, because you couldn't, you know, you tried to, I mean, you weren't in control at all in your life for like 20 some odd years, right? And so just for a human to adapt and survive, you have to take a situation in which there is zero control and manufacture a sense of control. And even now, you're manufacturing control where you really don't have so much. Now, the real tragedy with that is that if you start accepting responsibility and thinking you're in control of stuff that you're not, that's going to feed the self-blame because you're not actually in control. Right? If I like do a weather dance and it doesn't rain and then I start beating myself up, like I can want the rain, I can wish for the rain, I can even do the weather dance. But whether the weather dance creates the rain or not is not actually mine to control. And so you can be a good mom, you can do the best that you can, but that's literally all that you can do. And the really terrifying thing, I know it's kind of weird, maybe I'm screwing up here, but like it may not be enough. But whether it's enough or not is, I know it sounds weird, but is completely independent from how much you put in. Does that make sense?
Nope.
Okay, so let me put it this way.
I was following, and then I didn't.
Yep, and this is I'm with you, right? So that's why we're talking about this. So like, you can put in 100%, and if you put in 100%, is it going to be enough? Huh?
Probably not.
The answer is you don't know. But even if it's not enough, right? So I get you emotionally. It's probably not. That's I'm broke and nothing. You know. But this is exactly what I'm saying is like you can put in 100%, but like you can't craft a life for your child. In fact, that's exactly what you should be moving away from because that's what people did from you, which is instinctively what you learn, and that's not your fault. Like people, you speak English because everyone around you is speaking English. That's not. It's just how our brain is wired. We just internalize the lessons around us. But I think a big part of this is like recognizing that when your child has a difficulty, and I know it sounds weird, you're not to blame. I know you feel blame. And the way we're going to tackle that is by understanding that you can give 100%. And it may not be enough. What do you think about that?
I guess I feel like I'm having trouble even wrapping my brain around it because my first concern is if I accept this, will I not feel like giving 100%? Because all I've wanted to do not all I've wanted to do, but a big part of me wants to stop, wants to give up, doesn't want to try, wants to just shut down when he's yelling at me and go in a ball. And so whatever I need to tell myself to keep going, like, I feel like that's what I need to do as opposed to entertaining that.
Yeah. So I'm with you, right? Because it's terrifying because the only way that you can give 100%, like anything less, like, because you're going up the mountain of jelly beans. So if you stop climbing with 100% energy, you're just going to slide all the way back down.
It'll sink into them.
Right?
You're not even going to slide anymore.
Yeah. And I think the tragedy here is that objectively, I know it sounds kind of weird, but like that's whatever you're doing right now is like not working.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not, I don't mean that it's not working objectively. Actually, that was wrong. I mean that because you're doing great. It's actually working pretty well.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Like,
so
surely we can be doing better. I have to hope that we can be doing better.
I don't know that you can be doing. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Let's say yes. There's something we can do better. And I think weirdly enough, this is where like, so what I would say is like, have you had a conversation with your kid about how he has the power in the relationship?
No.
He has the power in the relationship, right?
Yeah. I mean, he can choose to ignore me, cut off the relationship. I'm here. It's an open invitation.
Well, but I mean, he's figured out that like if I want to play a video game and mom tries to take it away, like I can start yelling at her and she's gonna cave.
But I don't necessarily cave.
Oh, tell me about that.
I've those even though I want to shut down, and I do sometimes, but less and less as the years have gone on. So I I let him know it's okay to be angry, and but he's not allowed to yell at me, and that he's still not allowed to play the game or whatever else. Now, he then proceeds to try to win me over with reason. And boy, the boy can argue. Boy, the boy can argue. And he never has had any problems about feeling that he is right. He was 2 years old and he was sure that I was only his mommy. I was not a nurse. I was not anything else. I was only his mommy. And when I got someone on the phone to tell him that, I am your mommy and I am a nurse and I mean, other things, he listened on the phone and he just turned his head away and then turned back and just changed the topic of conversation. So anyway, he's so with the argument, then I have trouble because I want him to feel heard, and maybe I need to think about this more, but like I wrestle like with meaning and questions, and my questions were shut down when I was younger. Don't think about that topic. Now, not entirely, but but I don't. What comes to mind is me at 17 up at the organization trying so hard to figure out what was wrong with me, and wanting so much to be held, and then coming home and trying so hard to pretend that everything was okay, because I was supposed to be inwardly miserable all the time, because you're supposed to be constantly mourning, and that's a term that's all the time going on, and blah blah blah. And so I'm supposed to be mourning, and I'm good at it. And I'm also, though, supposed to have a ministry smile, so I'm supposed to always be attracting others to Jesus with my smile, and everything's supposed to be okay, and my testimony is what matters, and blah blah blah. And then I'm also supposed to be listening to God, and I'm also not eating because I'm not good at anything else, but boy, can I go without eating. Sorry.
Okay, nope. Right? So I'm pulling the rope. It's all good stuff. Okay? So what I'm hearing is that you're struggling. Okay, so first of all, I underestimated you. Second of all, you're amazing.
Thanks.
Third of all, I think it's incredibly impressive that dealing with all of this, right, which is like it's right beneath the surface, and boy, does it come roaring out. If your kid is yelling at you, if you're able to maintain a boundary, that is like amazing, Kimberly. I just assumed that when he starts yelling, the trauma takes over because you talked about the inner child, but like, right. Wow, like that is really remarkable.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Part of that scene is just so, and it relates to me being a mom, because my mom plays heavily into everything, and the abandonment especially. And when I finally revealed that I was struggling, and it was because I couldn't make up my mind what to wear, because God was supposed to tell me what to wear, and I'd been in front of the closet for like an hour trying to figure out which of these skirts and blah 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 and whatever. And I'd felt like God didn't want me to tell my family that I was struggling, but I wasn't really sure what I was hearing, because felt this and then I felt that, and it didn't make sense. But then I'm also supposed to be under God's authority. So anyway, I'm reeling back in. When my mom heard, when I started just in tears and on the floor, just like devastated, letting her know, this is what's in my mind. Like, and I don't remember what exactly I said, but it was brief, and it was confusion, and it was tears. And I'm pretty sure my mom yelled at me. I can't remember anymore. But she walked away, And I just remember, like, for months, all I wanted was for my mom to hold me and say, "It's okay, baby, we're going to get you help." And but of course you can't get me help because you're also highly concerned about religious freedoms and the government coming in and they're going to take away your kids and blah blah blah. And gosh, don't tell Kimberly about those things because they're going to think we're in a cult. What's a cult? I don't even know what's a cult. Anyway, so that was the beginning of like my mom figuring out that I wasn't okay and then proceeding to crush me. And so the message I got thereafter was that I'm crazy. And even my siblings, one of them in particular, has come back, and we don't talk much, but has come back and said, Mom didn't just like not help you. Mom made an example out of you for what not to be. And meanwhile, this was me trying. The harder I tried to do well and to do better, the more messed up I got. And hope my mom never sees this because my mom's a good person. She was struggling with her own shit. She has her own baggage and blah blah blah. And my dad's a horrible person. I'm one of 2 kids that still talks to him when on occasion I talk to him. Hope he doesn't see this either. I still love him. Anyway, when I was raped, 2 weeks later I attempted suicide because I was like, oh, I'm done. Like, I keep getting myself into this. And the doctor said he wouldn't release me from the psych ward unless I called, which was, anyway, the doctor said he wouldn't release me unless I called my family, which I had like no contact with at the time, little to no contact with. I'd been living in my car while in nursing school at the time. I'm president of my college honor society. So I got a scholarship through the nursing school and I was showering at the gym and blah, blah, blah. And I had a little part-time job. It was awful. Anyway, I was still in denial. Like, it was most definitely right, but I was still in denial. My mom first asked me if he'd raped me and said if it, then I just didn't answer. And she said, don't tell your dad, they'll kill him. Which I obviously wouldn't want my dad to do that, but at least there's a little up there on the bright side. But then when I told her that I was in the hospital, she said, you know, if you'd been pregnant, you could have killed it. And that's and I did not attempt suicide, and I did end up driving myself to the hospital and such, which is like also feel shame about because like you can't even kill yourself, right? I know it's a horrible thing to say, but like the last thing I wanted was to be messed up in some other way. I had been working so hard to get my family back and everything else, and none of it mattered because no one cared. No one was there, and no one's still there. And I meant to only share a little bit, and I hope I didn't share too much, and I'm sorry if I did, and thank you for listening.
Sure. So take a second.
Okay. I think I'm just embarrassed now.
That's okay. I'm going to, when you're ready, I want you to grab the rope and then I'm going to keep pulling.
Okay. I'm going to grab the rope now. Thanks.
Okay. So Kimberly, you said that when it was too much, you were 17 years old. And you went and you told your mom that, hey, and you offered confusion, right? That was the main thing you said. Not blame, not being a heathen, just like, I don't know.
Just desperate.
Just desperation and confusion. And what did you want more than anything else in the world?
I wanted her to hold me. I wanted her to love me. That's what I wanted.
And you said something like, we're going to get you
help. Right.
And if she had done that on a scale of 0 to 100, how good of a mom would she have been?
10, 100,
100. And when your son was 8 years old and came to you and said, I'm thinking about hurting myself, what did you do?
Got him help.
Did you hold him?
Yes.
Did you tell him that we're going to get you help?
Yeah.
On a scale of 0 to 100, how good of a mom are you?
I can't say 100. That doesn't, maybe at that time, at first I was like, I had this short little bit where I was angry, and then I was like, and I don't know that I think a little bit of that showed briefly, and I'm not a mom who like rarely lose my temper or anything like that, but I can't say 100 because there was like this pause, and then I was like, I'm sorry, baby.
What can you say? If you can't say 100.
90.
90. Right? So I would say that's 100. But you know, that I think now we're talking about we've climbed 90. I'll take it.
Okay.
And so I think this is the thing. This is what I'm saying, Kimberly, is like, I don't know how else to point it out to you, but there is like very clearly a wrong thing to do and very clearly a right thing to do. And if your mom had been taken aback or had an emotional reaction, I don't think that would have been any less. I mean, you're human, right? Like pausing and even getting angry or whatever, like that's an emotional reaction that's not going to, I mean, in my professional opinion, it's not the half-second delay that determines whether the kid is okay or not, right? It's like, does your child get help? Do they get help? That's what determines their future as much as it can. Right? So I think the only thing broken about you is that you can't see that you're not broken. That's the most fundamental thing. Right? And we can blame you that. And then your mind, we have to be careful with that because that's a part of you that's broken. And then you're going to love that. Oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I see that I'm normal? I'm so screwed up. And that can go on to infinity. And I think when it comes to, I mean, you said like, if I'm a better mom, I mean, I think that you're doing a great job. I think you're doing the best that you can do. And I think that it may not be enough. Right? And more practically, I think that like one thing I would encourage you to do is over the next couple of years, especially let your kids, because if you're doing 100%, if you're putting forth all the effort, not only are you exhausted, but the other thing that's going to start happening is that like Brian especially needs to start taking responsibility. It's not that you are an obstacle that needs to be overcome either through anger or argument. It's that he should want what you want, or he should understand why you are doing the things that you're doing, which is hard for him. Because you said early on, you know, when he was 2 years old, he's very rigid in his thinking. That comes with the temper and the red hair and all that good stuff. Right? But he needs to, like, you know, and this is the kind of thing where if you do too much for him, like, first of all, it's not going to work, right? Because he's like working against you. And you know, you may win today, you may lose tomorrow. But like ultimately, like this is the kind of thing where I'm getting, you know, it sounds like you're doing a great job of setting boundaries, and, you know, we can get in all those details, but I don't think that's really where the issue is. I think the issue is in a nutshell, like, sure, can you do stuff better? Are you broken? Like, yeah. But I think the weird thing is that you make a conclusion based on that. Like, I mean, who in your situation could be not broken? Like, I can't imagine, right? And I think what's actually so amazing about you is that it doesn't matter how broken you are. That's the biggest thing that has to change. I mean, you are so, and it sounds kind of weird. I'm just going to say it, though, because it feels like the right thing to say. You are so fucked up. And yet when your 8-year-old kid came to you, you knocked it out of the park. And if you can do that, you don't need to be fixed. And that's how awesome you are. is normal humans have to be fixed and normal in order to be good parents. You are such an awesome mom that you don't even need to be normal. And you are still doing such an amazing job for your kids.
Thank you. That's helpful.
And we talked about how you're building this house of cards in a hurricane. It's like, hold on a second. Yeah, could it come tumbling down? But you also build a house of cards in a hurricane. Like, that's pretty fucking cool. Not everyone can do that. And you've got all these things supporting you. I mean, you showed up here today, right? Like, you're trying to learn everything that you can. It sounds like you got through nursing school on a scholarship, living through your car and all that shit. This is what I'm telling you, is that like all that stuff is going to be, I mean, it's not what you do. It's all that stuff that's going to matter. You are in the same way that all these complexes within you, this idea that you're broken was beaten into you over the course of 20 years of your life. What are you instilling in your children?
Not that message for sure. Lots of the opposite.
Yeah. Right? And your kids are going to have problems. I've seen it. And there's going to be a lot of like emotional regulation and stuff that it sounds like you've actually like really learned really well, that you're going to be instilling that. But I can tell you, I mean, I've had kids walk into my office who are in their 20s, 25, 30, and they'll say, you know, my parents were awesome. And they can still have problems. It's the very opposite of story. You're showing me success despite a really crappy hand of cards, and what your kids are going to have is a good hand of cards, and they're still going to struggle because that's what it means to be human. Like, think about what you're teaching them.
That's
right?
really encouraging.
Yeah. I mean, you're teaching them that no matter how bad things get, you focus on what's important and you try to be as patient as you can and you give 100%. Ryan's in the gifted and talented program.
Yeah.
Right? He's just got too much feeling in there. He doesn't know how to deal with it. Sounds like he gets a lot of patience and a lot of love. And those are probably the two most important things from a parenting perspective that you can do not to fuck up your child. Just patience and love. I mean, even if they were like, I mean, I ran circles around my parents. I ended up okay. Right? I had struggles. Your kid has had struggles. That's sad. It doesn't make you a bad mom. So I think you're like, and this is what I see from you. I'm not getting as much resistance now as I was earlier. Oh, I got to find a tissue or something. But what are you, how you doing right now? What I got more rejection from you earlier. And it's okay if you got rejection now, just let me know.
No, I feel kind of like I'm in the eye of the hurricane, and so kind of still and calm. I'm tracking, accepting, I think, everything.
Yeah. Great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I mean, I think there's all kinds of other stuff, but I mean, you came in here and you said, if I can be a less broken mom, like this is the crazy thing. We can get back and forth about whether you're broken or not broken, but I think that the wildest thing, the most revolutionary thing is that you don't need to be fixed to do a good job for your kids. If that needed to be, like, just think about it logically for a second.
Yeah.
You know, if that were true with how broken you are, like, how are they doing this well? And it sounds like on the whole, they're doing okay.
Yeah.
Like some struggles, but like high points too.
Yeah, they're in karate now too, which is helping.
Good. Yeah, that's a fantastic thing to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm speechless. It doesn't often happen.
Well, good. I don't think we need to say a whole lot more. I think you can just digest and process. And it sounds like you've had a couple of really good mental health supports. I know we talked about like being socially awkward and not having friends. I can fire some random stuff at you if you want. But
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so first thing is you don't have a poor memory.
I'm sorry. That sounds so funny.
Yeah.
I know that you'll understand my laughter, but it's so funny.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I'm
I could be wrong
listening.
here, right? Because we haven't
I'm
really talked about
listening.
it.
I'm totally
Yeah.
listening. Yeah.
No, that's fine. So I think probably what's happening is you've got, you're not able to track a beautiful word that you said, right? So like, I don't think it's a memory problem. It's a tracking problem. So it's information. It sounds like you were concerned that you have ADHD. So if that's the case, it's not a problem with memory. It's that stuff never gets deposited in the first place. You're not able to track with the information. Next thing is in terms of like making friends and stuff, like I'm super curious about that, but I think that's a conversation for a different day. And I'd say that, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know when you've got the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a great work schedule. Now I've got my associates and I'm trying to go back to school for my bachelor's, which is, I love the course material. I love learning, but it's a lot of writing and communication is not a strong point. Actually, especially in writing. So I'm struggling with that. I'm deviating again. But so, I mean, while they're at school right now. So in theory, yes, I could go talk to people instead of playing video games.
Yeah, but I don't. I mean, so that's where like, yeah, if you were a perfect human being, but remember, we're all like floating around 50%, right? So
Right.
so I mean, this is the kind of thing where you can look at a normal life and like you would probably have more friends if you were taught in any micro iota way of like how to form healthy social relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think this is just stuff where it's like, okay, first find stable ground. Right. There's probably like, I'm getting a sense that there's still a lot beneath the surface. So I don't know if you see a therapist, but like, you know, continuing at that
To get back in.
or doing some kind of group is like probably because that's what was helpful for you. Right.
Yeah.
And just because I think you've got a lot to share. And I really think, Kimberly, you're an amazing person. Like, seriously, like I'm impressed and I'm
Thank you.
optimistic for you and stuff like that. Like, I don't
I appreciate that.
And I think it's hard to, the other thing is, I mean, you know, for all of your brokenness and personal deficiencies, making friends for human beings right now is just harder objectively than it used to be in the history of humanity. It's just hard for everybody. And I think we sometimes like lose sight of that, especially if we have a history of trauma. The most screwed up thing about having a history of trauma is we blame ourselves for stuff that like everybody is dealing with and is not actually your fault.
Yeah.
Because that's what you were taught, right? Everything's your fault.
Yeah.
Can't hear the voice of God. You better start
Yeah.
fasting
Starving.
to induce hallucinations because you're not holy enough.
Right. Yeah. But then also, I don't relate to people. Like,
Well, of course
unless
not.
they have trauma.
Right.
But then, but, not, you know, but then you also have, yeah, thankfully, there's not like tons of people just walking around with their trauma, just like blaring at you. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, let's join over that every
Yeah.
now and then. But then,
So I think that that's also another really tricky thing is that it's easy to relate to other people with trauma, which I think can be healing. But honestly, I don't think is necessarily healthy as the foundation of a normal
yeah,
social
it
relationship.
hasn't. Yeah.
They can
But
be.
then I also
Yeah, go ahead.
don't know like social dynamics. I asked my psychiatrist during the psychiatrist who is in group or over group if maybe I'm autistic, and he said, you know, with your background we'd never really be able to identify that, which is kind of fair. I don't think I don't present as autistic, but the amount of processing that I have had to do, I had one friend for a while that just broke things down for me in a way that remind, like it would make sense to break things down like that for someone who is autistic. Like it, and it still requires so much thought, and like I still don't naturally understand social dynamics. I've gotten so much better with it, but mostly I just want to hide. Like, but I'm not. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but sometimes people like you get adopted by a friend group.
Really like that.
Yeah, I know it's weird, but
no,
I think honestly that's kind of what it like it, and I don't know exactly how that happens. You know, my friend group, we've adopted people from time to time.
That's cool.
And I think this is, once again, it's like something that you can't control 100%, but you can work on it. I just don't think you've got the bandwidth, dude.
That's kind of encouraging too. The bandwidth really sits home.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think that
I can look forward to that though. I can work on things while looking forward to that as a possibility someday.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you made a couple of judgmental statements about your romantic relationships, and I think that's also something that, especially as you start to socialize, you've got to be careful about. Sometimes people with a history of trauma, it's way easier to form a romantic relationship than it is to form a platonic relationship.
I don't even necessarily want a romantic. I've mostly not dated for the past decade, and anyway, I'd much rather.
Yeah, so
now.
I think just give yourself, be patient with yourself. That, like, right now, I think 8 and 10 it's a tough age, because this is when they really start to, like, understand that they have ideas and opinions, but they don't quite have the self-regulation. So I think stuff like karate and like a lot of like structure is really good. That kind of tires them out. But I mean, I think once they get to be teenagers, I know it sounds kind of weird. A lot of times things get worse, but some instinct within me, I have no idea, I can't see the future, is that I have a feeling that when your kids become teenagers, you maybe get a little bit of relief.
I am going to hang on to that, cross my fingers and hope. And if it doesn't come to pass, that'll be okay. But it'll still help to hope. I am just remembering, and before I forget, my son, I told him that I would be talking to you because I asked his permission before sharing about him
Very good.
in the hospital, Lization. And not that he will necessarily see this for years to come. Oh gosh, I haven't thought through that. Anyway, I told him I would ask what you thought was a good or an acceptable amount of time on video games.
That's a good question. Okay, so let me give him an answer. Okay, so
Okay.
I think honestly the short answer is there isn't a acceptable or unacceptable amount of time. But what I think that for kids who are 10, I know it sounds kind of weird, I would encourage more like binge gaming than daily gaming.
Okay.
Right? So like games should be fun. Like they should be something that you look forward to. They should be something that, like, not just like, I don't know what to do today. Like, I got home, I'm done with school. Like, I'm going to queue up and I'm going to play for 5 hours. And then, like, like when I think about the gaming that I've done, and I've done a lot, I really have fond memories of a lot of it. And there are times where I get like, so I'd say that if you get excited about gaming and you remember it fondly, that's good gaming. And what I'd say is, what does he play?
Roblox, Minecraft. He's on Conan a little bit with myself and his dad.
Right. So I think it should be like baked into your life as opposed to filling in the gaps. So anytime gaming starts filling in the gaps in our life, just like water, it like starts expanding in there, and it like makes our life smaller. The gap widens and more gaming goes in to fill the time. Oh yeah, like I'm gonna not go to a party today. I'd rather game because I'm feeling socially anxious. Then you don't get invited to the party next time. And then you've got this 4-hour gap that you fill with gaming. Whereas before you had an option, and now it's the default. So that's how it kind of takes control. So what I almost say is that, think about what you want to accomplish every week. And there are some days that, I was talking to someone in our community recently who took a couple of days off when Baldur's Gate 3 came out. And that's completely acceptable in my book. Take days off. That's your vacation. You're going to binge Baldur's Gate for 72 hours. Go for it. But then go back to the rest of life. It'll be more fun that way. Whereas if you're just filling it in all, you don't even remember it a year from now. And it's not it was that fun. It's just fast forwarding your life.
Yeah.
So I would almost encourage him to really think about, okay, what's really fun about gaming and how to do that. And then really think about what's fun about the rest of life. And do that too. Because the less you play, the more fun, the more enjoyable games actually are. And games do two things. They induce pleasure and they take away pain. And the more that you gain a game, the less pleasure they induce. But the taking away pain component never decreases. And the way you become dependent on video games is they're not even fun anymore, but when you stop playing them, this roar of negative emotion comes roaring back. And even for your kid, if he feels a lot, one thing you need to understand as a parent is that may be one way that he has learned to regulate his emotions.
He absolutely uses it to regulate his emotions, but he doesn't want to do anything else. Anything else is anything else.
And so that's where I think he's getting old enough to where you can ask the question, what are you what do you want your life to be? Do you want your life to be something where it's doing what you want?
Okay.
Which he's going to argue back, and I think it'll be a good argument because he'll say, well, I'm a kid and it's my job to have fun as a kid. And you will say, yes, you're correct.
That is what he will say.
What else is your job as a kid? How are you going to balance that? And that's when we kind of get to this whole surrendering responsibility thing. Give him some and ask him what are you going to do about this? What do you want your life to be like? If you keep doing this and you fill in, he's going to outmaneuver you more and more and more. I mean, you had an advantage when he was 2. But he's catching up in brain power, calculating speed, even physical size.
Yes. And oh my gosh, we watched a little video. He asked how rust forms the other day. And I was like, I don't know. So, well, and this was actually kind of a year ago now, but how does rust form? Let's watch a YouTube video. And we watched it and I really wasn't focusing. And so we finished it. I didn't know how much he got. I was like, maybe we could watch another one. And he was like, oh no, I can explain it to you. And I don't know if he explained it correctly or not. But I don't think it was quite right. And I was like, maybe we could watch another one. And he got off the bed and he sighed and he goes, I can't explain anything to you. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're 9, 8, 9. Yeah. But
right. So I think instilling him in this idea that he's got a lot of power and energy and argumentative capability. He's gifted and talented, and he can turn that against you. He can point, have you under the crosshairs and target lock on mom, and he's going to win. The question is, does he want to? Right? Yeah, go ahead.
Your gaming program for kids, would that help someone at his age? Because it's listed for, I think, more teenagers. I do feel like he's advanced.
Oh yeah, I mean,
okay.
I hope you would be able to get something out of that.
Okay,
for sure.
That's encouraging.
And okay. Also, especially, I mean, so I think the main thing is yeah, it'll help.
Okay, cool, awesome.
I really think so. And please report back if it doesn't.
Okay.
But, even some of this stuff around, you mentioned that his dad is kind of staying with you guys, or you're in a cohabitation kind of thing, and y'all have a good relationship right now. And all those kinds of dynamics, I think for you to understand a lot of this stuff about what it's doing for him, how it's serving as an emotional regulation tool, I think it'll equip you and will help you navigate conversations with him. Awesome. And then some of the stuff around, especially this communication stuff that I'm kind of dripping to you, we really lay out. Awesome. And I think for someone who, he's basically cognitively closer to 12 or even 13. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's missing is puberty.
Oh, but he's talking about girls, Dr. K. Only a little bit, but
So
and smart girls. He's attracted to smart girls. So
anyway. So I mean, all that stuff, and I think sort of leveraging, asking him what do you want from this life? Because it sounds like he's a thinker.
Mhm.
And then how can we come up with a plan that, like, do you just want to spend, like, you want to just quit school and stay at home and game all day? Like, is that really what you want? And, like, where would that get you?
Okay.
And so that's why I kind of say for a kid like that, I'd say binge, where it's
Okay.
like, okay, like, I want you to do stuff that you can be happy and proud of at the end of the week. And then, like, Saturday, you're going to wake up, you're going to have breakfast, you're going to do some chores. And once 10:30 rolls around, we're going to start the clock.
Okay.
I'm going to bring you a sandwich for lunch. We're going to order
like
pizza
it.
for dinner. And then you can quit whenever you want to, or until 10 p.m. Like, you can go for 12 hours.
Cool.
Right? And as long as you do what you're supposed to do, then you tell me, is that better for you? Is that more fun than playing 3 hours every day and now it's time to stop and you throwing a temper tantrum? What would you rather do?
Okay.
Really work with him, because I
Yeah.
think a big tenet of our program is that you can't do it for him forever.
I
But
like
sometimes
it.
that kind of stuff backfires, so you got to be a little bit careful, and it takes some work.
Well, I'm excited about getting involved in the program. So
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Cool. So yeah, that's my answer for your kid. I hope
Thank you. No, that's very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, all of it. It's very helpful.
Cool. Anything else?
Well, you mentioned earlier when I was talking about feeling like group therapy should be in schools and such.
Look
I
at
was
whose
kind of
memory is intact.
thanks. I appreciate that. That was kind of you to point out. um, I guess I'm intrigued. Like, what part of that resonated with you, or
Well-
y'all involved in some way in that? Is there some way I can be involved? I guess is kind of where my mind is going. Although that last point, I should
I'm
probably
just
slow
curious,
down.
what about groups was so transformative for you?
Oh my gosh. I had already been in therapy for years, but hearing something from the therapist, and that's assuming the therapist did much sharing or giving feedback. I'm very thankful for that. It definitely has its place, but it was so different in group therapy. Hearing it from others, hearing feedback, hearing perspectives that were different from my own, but it wasn't just about me being able to share and people giving me feedback. And it wasn't just about the feedback. A lot of it was the compassion, and the relationships. Relationships deepened, kind of overnight, but there were still structures in place to keep up kind of healthy boundaries and so on and so forth. So the compassion, the feedback, but then being in a position where I was able to give to others too, that meant a lot. It really, really helped me give myself some value and merit to realize that I can help others. And hey, look, I'm not a complete idiot because I just was able to give some feedback and advice. And I can't be completely lost in this world, as lost as I feel I am, as lost as and incompetent as people have said I am, because I'm sharing with this person, and a lot of times I don't have anything insightful to share, but I can share myself and I can feel compassion towards you, and me feeling compassion towards you also allows me to accept that compassion that you're offering me. It was really life-changing, like just hands down life-changing. And there were people there who, some came from backgrounds with lots of trauma and some didn't. And there was so much connection and community amongst all of us. And yeah, I think I keep myself again from going on to too much of a tangent. I wasn't in school growing up, as traditional school, but I feel I'm kind of surprised that so much in education is focused on how many wives some king in England had, and all of and so much other things that we don't use on the day to day, and yet on the day to day we all interact with the others. We all have big emotions, and some of us have them more often than others. We all kind of uh, the relationship connection with others is, in my opinion, the most fundamental part of life. And it surprises me that we don't have focus on that in classrooms, in schools. And I wish it was a more accepted part of society, that people get to experience this group session instead of a high school trip after you graduate high school. Like, this is, or along with it, this is part of getting older, and this is something that people need as kind of their entrance into adulthood. Everyone should, as much as possible, be able to have this experience, and there should be education in the schools on dealing with emotions, big emotions, on where to seek resources. I didn't know I qualified for food stamps for years. I didn't know till like I was at the tail end of it's just, I don't, someone said, maybe I still qualify. I should check in on that, but recently, but I'm fine. Anyway, I was living in my car, but apparently, like, I mean, I doubt where I wanted to go, where there is available, I would have wanted to go to, but there are resources out there, and I didn't have that. And so I feel like instruction on, hey, here are the resources within the community. Here are also how you can, help regulate your emotions on the day to day. Here's what healthy relationships look like, and here's some practical ways how you can work towards that. And then and I've deviated away from the group therapy concept, but then also having the group as a separate thing. All of that, I think, should be incorporated.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. So I was just really curious, because I rarely hear people say that, but I agree 100%. So even when I think about the stuff that I've done, I actually find that my group coaching experiences, which is a little bit different from group therapy, but it all the same elements. So we sort of, when we were designing our group coaching experience, we looked at what are the factors that are responsible for improvement in therapy. And what we discovered is that a lot of it is not actually medical. It's like the stuff that you're actually talking about. It's connection. It's kind of this compassion exchange. And so we have group programs that I personally, like, I ran, I don't run many groups now, but, a few years ago I ran a lot of groups. Like, I ran 4 groups kind of like all at the same time. So I had like 4 groups of people that I really got to know, and we really did a lot of awesome work together. Yeah. And I completely agree with you. I think it's so interesting. I'd never sort of thought about it quite like that, but it makes perfect sense. That what I'm almost hearing from you is that group is a place that you can go to learn all the stuff that a normal human being should know.
Yeah.
Right? How to form connections with people, how to be vulnerable with people, how to listen, how to give feedback. And most human beings are given opportunities to help other human beings. But that's shrinking, especially as we become more and more technological. We're kind of like fracturing our society a little bit. And so I think there's a lot of these like formative things which used to happen normally, like 1,000 years ago, maybe even, this kind of idea of compassion exchange, and like giving someone compassion and recognizing that you don't have to have a brilliant insight to actually help another human being, that it's not that someone can, and you really feel that authenticity where they're like, wow, that was really helpful. And you're like, okay, so I can actually help other people. I have value.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's really hard to gain value as a human being. Like, even if we start to achieve stuff, right? Then we start to think that our value is tied to achievement. So how do I build confidence? Okay, I get first place at I get a first place trophy. Great. Now I feel good about myself. But if I ever lose the trophy or I get second place, then my value decreases. So there's a lot of this really core stuff. And part of the reason I was curious about it is because we have trouble explaining what the value of group interaction is. The value is definitely there. And we have like research studies and stuff that will kind of look at outcomes and things like that. And it works really well. It takes time though. So that's the big thing.
So interested in this research, and my classes are on evidence-based research right now, and I am adoring it anyway.
I just really appreciate you sharing your perspective, and
thank you.
We'll stay tuned to our socials as we publish this stuff, and you can take a look and methodologically tell us if we did a good job or not. But that's awesome that you're, going back to just the social stuff. Like, so if you're in school, you've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and you're working as a nurse, I don't know how much bandwidth you've got. And on top of that, you're on a mountain of jelly beans.
Yeah. Honestly, it's weirdly relieving to hear you say that. I don't know why. I wouldn't have thought it would be, but it's like, okay, yeah, I don't know if it's thinking, okay, that's another area where I'm sucking at life because I'm not trying to be more social. Probably that's where it is. But thank you so much for all of this, Dr. K. I cannot tell you how much I have appreciated our time and how much I appreciate what you do on a regular basis. I'm going through, I told myself that I would finish Dr. K's guide before now, but it's really deep. I've been really impressed and appreciative going through it. I've fallen to sleep at night listening to self-help resources for years at 2x speed. I'm so upset they don't let me go faster, because I'm like, hey, I need help, like faster than normal speed, like faster than 2x speed, please and thank you. But anyway, partially joking, but I'm sure there's plenty of resources out there that I just haven't tapped into, but I feel like Dr. K's guide is a really fresh perspective. It really brings together a lot of knowledge that I've kind of gleaned over the years, but mostly it's presenting a lot of fresh information, and it's really insightful, and so I'm enjoying that and doing better with meditation as a practice. So that's awesome. That's being helpful. So anyway, thank you for that. Thank you for what you do. Thank you so much for your time today. I can't thank you enough. So I'll stop trying.
I was going to say right back at you. I mean, thank you so much for benefiting from what we've built. I know it sounds weird, but that's why we built it, right? So I'm really happy to hear that it's helped you in your learning stuff. And really, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I know that you said I'm sorry because you included lots of stuff, but I think what we sometimes don't acknowledge is that this is actually what parents are dealing with.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is what life is, and not all of us have the best upbringings, and not all of us are lucky, but like your responsibility as a parent does not change.
Yeah.
And so how do you navigate that? And I think your story, I imagine, and I hope, will be incredibly validating, liberating, and allow other people to give themselves forgiveness or self-compassion, because, a lot of us are struggling, and it's okay. And it's not our fault just because our life is hard. And should we try to make it better? Sure. But, there's only so much we can do at once. So thank you so much, Kimberly, for coming on.
Thank you, Dr. K. I appreciate it. You have a great rest of the week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.